How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I am joined by Christian Slater, back from spring break, buddy. How did that go?
Shut up, man. I'm not Christian. I'm Christian's legal advisor, Rich Mahogany. My client was wrongfully pursued by the policia after an alleged assault on Mr. Dan Cortez.
I thought your client was in Cancun to find Mark McGrath at MTV Spring Break.
Well, it turns out that MTV doesn't do Spring Break anymore, and from behind, Dan Cortez and Mark McGrath are very similar looking, so my client had to give the fuzz the slip. And now, thanks to the miracle of Chevy engineering and a discarded refrigerator box, he is safely back on U.S. soil, but I will not be disclosing his whereabouts.
And his whereabouts have nothing to do with you asking me for my Amazon password and the email receipt I received for one Texas Tycoon Halloween costume. Is Christian returning to the show, or am I stuck with you, Rich?
Amazon purchases aren't admissible in courts. You need not worry about anything to do with that. Also, stay out of your Amazon account for a while, and for safety purposes, I'm going to need the 3-digit number on the back of your card and your social. Plus, you should be thrilled that I'm joining you this week. I'm doing it as a personal favor to my client. I'm a huge gamer. When the state decided I was cured of my gambling addiction and released me back to society, I invested all my free time into becoming the Gorf World Champion.
There's a lot to unpack here. All right, man. Whatever, Rich. Let's just get on with the show at this point. So I feel like I'm kind of a broken record at this point, because every week, it seems, for the past couple of weeks, I've been checking out city builders, and this week was no different. It started off with Terra Nil a couple of weeks, which is one of my favorite games of the year so far this year. I'm still stuck on it, but also I kind of stopped playing it because Terrascape came out this week. Terrascape is kind of a more traditional city builder, whereas Terra Nil is like a city builder in reverse. Terrascape does have a gimmick to it, and that is that it is based off like a deck of cards. It's not like a deck builder, but you get cards, you draw cards every turn or round or however you want to put it. And that allows you to put different units, buildings, what have you, out onto the grid in front of you. Every map is kind of like a floating island in the sky, and everything is kind of like medieval-ish, I guess. You know, you're putting down like cities and villages and huts and granaries and taverns and chapels and things like that. It's definitely got like a medieval slant to it.
You know, creating my own mountainside town to live in seems like a pretty good idea right about now.
I imagine it does. So Terrascape, it took me a little while to kind of figure it all out, and I still have not unlocked every type of building in it. So you can merge buildings, and like the basic example is if you put 4 God, what do they call them? Is it just village? I can't remember. They have names, like there's like city, like houses are under the city, village has something. But if you put 4 like housing units in like a diamond pattern, they merge together to form like a city square. And there's like another one where if you put like 2 farm tiles and a house in like a triangle pattern, it creates like a big farm kind of thing. So it doesn't tell you how to do these. You kind of have to figure it out on your own. The one that I haven't been able to do is I think there's like a cathedral one to do with the chapel. I tried looking it up online how to do it, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I also have not done well enough to kind of get that far, because you don't know what cards you're going to get. So, you know, you get to the point where it's like you've done well enough this game to unlock the chapel unit. And then the next time you draw cards from the deck that would have chapel in it, you'll get one. But after that, you don't know when the next time you're going to get one is. So it's kind of a crapshoot here and there. The way it works is you're getting medals like bronze, silver, and gold, and at the bottom there's a bar that fills up and it shows you like little diamond icons, like how close you are to hitting each thing. There's no real objective other than to get the highest score possible. There are challenge maps that are kind of like mini puzzles that will give you very specific decks to play with, like you'll be on one that has a lot of like mountains. So this particular puzzle is all about mountain type units to put down. I say units, they're buildings, like quarries and quarries and like ironworks and stuff like that. So I did all of the challenge maps. I finished all of those, and I've done most of like the scenario builds. And then other than that, it's just like free play. And it's not free play in the sense that it's like a sandbox where you have unlimited resources. You do still have to kind of earn your decks and all that. The only choices you really have is, do you want to play on a small, medium, or large style map? I'm at the point now where it seems entirely pointless to play on anything other than a large map. They are procedurally generated or randomly generated, so you're not quite sure what you're going to get. They do spit out a seed number, so like if you want to save that, you could go back to that map theoretically in the future and keep messing with it. Also, the save system is really weird. There's been a couple of times, like out of habit, I hit continue instead of new game, and where it put me was not the last game I had played, so that was kind of strange. But there is, I have quit in the middle of playing on a map and been able to go back to it. I think it just goes off of whatever you last saved. And then I'm guessing what happens is that if you were doing like a puzzle, I don't think it brings you back to that. I think it brings you back to like the last like free play map you were on. The game is in early access, so maybe some of the stuff will get straightened out. They do have like a roadmap out, that shows, their plans for the year, and they definitely look like they're going to be supporting it pretty well. I can't get a good sense of how popular the game is. Terra Nil, I saw like a lot of people streaming it. People that I watch that do YouTube content were playing it. Podcasts I listened to had talked about it. I didn't hear anybody talk about Terrascape this week. Maybe they will talk about it this coming week, like the week that you're hearing this. But I really like it. I will say that I know a lot of people said that Terra Nil is like super chill, super relaxing. You can turn your brain off and play it. That's how I feel at Terrascape. Even though there is a challenge aspect to it and you have finite resources, and the random like luck of the draw with the deck proportion to it, or proponent to it, I do feel that Terra Nil is much more challenging. I guess just to me, the way my brain works, Terra Nil is a much more challenging and complex game. I also think that Terra Nil is particularly brutal in the fact that if you don't do certain things in the correct order, you are just straight up screwed. Terra Nil is like that in a way. You really have to think ahead, but you can kind of like bullshit your way through it if you know how. But it's better to learn how the game works, because then you're just going to be able to play it longer and get that higher score. Like, one of the buildings you could put down is like a city square. So that would make sense to put it in the middle of something. So since you could see the tiles, you just build your houses around it and keep building outwards, like in a pinwheel kind of shape. And then when you're ready to like throw it down, you put it and you get a huge bonus because you've built like a actual city around the city square building unit. The one thing I wish you could do, and I get that maybe this takes some of the challenge away, I don't know, I'd like to be able to put like a pin in a spot, kind of like on Minesweeper, where you could put the flag down to kind of like, I think there might be a bomb there, because sometimes it is very easy to get lost in creating these complex patterns, leaving spaces open just because of the way the map works. There's not always a visual grid on the map. And sometimes you honestly can't tell if there's already a unit put down, because some of the like just terrain that you can't build upon looks similar-ish enough to units that you are putting down, specifically some of like the forestry stuff. So I would like a way to like pin a tile. That way it's like a visual indicator of like, don't build here until I'm ready. And then, you can save it to put it down. So I'd like to see something like that put in along the way somehow. I don't know if that's something that other players would want, but I would find it highly beneficial. But I would say at this point, it's really tough. Is Terrascape, am I liking Terrascape better than Terra Nil? I have played more of Terrascape, despite Terra Nil being out for much longer. I really dug into this game this week. I put a lot of time into it. I think maybe I like Terrascape a little bit more simply because I have been better at playing the game, so I have seen more of it, and I feel more accomplished when I play it, whereas Terra Nil, like I said, I've been stuck for a couple of weeks now. Granted, I did not play... I think I only played it once this past week, so I've just been kind of like banging my head against the wall, and it's still at the point where both games, and Terrascape obviously just came out just a few days ago, but Terra Nil, it's still... there's just not a lot of information online about, like, what's the best way to tackle this map. And I don't want to just sit through somebody, like, streaming it to try and figure it out. I want just, like, answers. I just want somebody to be like, no, you should do this because this system interacts with this system and this will help you out. Like, I don't necessarily need somebody to, like, straight up give me the answer, which is what would end up happening if I watch somebody play it on YouTube or Twitch or whatever on, like, the particular map I'm stuck on. I just kind of want better... information about the units at hand and how I can interact with them and what the order of operations should be for what I'm doing. I think that would be helpful. But yeah, Terrascape, I definitely recommend. Like I said, they have a roadmap of their plans for the game for the year, essentially. I think the last thing on the roadmap that they have right now is like Q1 2024. So they are definitely planning some things out. I don't know when it'll hit like 1.0. I don't know if it's going to hit 1.0 along the way, or maybe Q1 2024 is like, okay, now it's 1.0, whatever it may be. But if you like city builders, I would highly recommend it. Coming from somebody that hates like deck mechanics in games, I don't like card mechanics, deck mechanics, all that stuff. It's, like I said, it's not a deck builder by any stretch, nothing like that. And I guess that would be the one negative I have to say is just the pure randomization of the way that cards get dealt to you. Sometimes you just really are not getting what you need. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes like you are getting exactly what you need. There doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason as to what decks are available from you to pick, because when you draw your deck, you get like three options to pick from. And I'm not quite sure what determines what those three options are. So that's a little bit of a negative, but I really like it. It is on my short list, we're only in the halfway through April, but I am keeping a running list of every game I have played this year, trying to do this much better than I did last year. So that way, when we do get to the end of the year and I'm doing game of the year and all that stuff, I have copious notes to help me along the way. And I would say right now, this is on the list. I've got the 3 games so far that I've played, I've played more than 3 games this year, but 3 games so far that are like, these are in contenders, for Game of the Year, and that's Terra Nil, Terrascape, and Hogwarts Legacy. So it's been, I want to be a little bit better prepared. So, yeah, Terrascape's out now on PC. Get it on Steam. That's where I got it. Definitely check it out if you're interested in city builders. The only other thing I really played this week was more of the show, and typically I don't want to talk about, like, sports game stuff, because I'm always playing sports games. But I don't like to bring it up every week just because it's the same thing. But I finally got a chance to check out the Negro Leagues mode in the show. And if you're not familiar what this is, so for the first time, I think ever in a baseball game, I could be wrong, there is Negro League content. So most people in America know that Jackie Robinson was the first black player to cross the race barrier into baseball and play in the major leagues. Well, what did all of the other black men and women that wanted to play baseball in America do before that? They played in the Negro Leagues. And it's not like the Negro Leagues shut down after Jackie Robinson moved over. They still went on. But there's not a lot of information readily available about the Negro Leagues. Even the Baseball Hall of Fame, it does have some stuff about it, but there's actually an entirely separate Negro League Hall of Fame, which is actually, they get a lot of their presentation stuff from, and I believe they worked with them for this mode. So for me, who is, baseball's my favorite sport. I'm a baseball fanatic, in the course of my life, I have done some research into the Negro League, so I'm somewhat familiar with it and some of the players that were big stars. Probably the 2 biggest mainstream Negro League stars were Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson. And so the Negro League mode in the show shows you pick a player I think there's about a dozen of them. You start with Satchel Paige. Well, I guess maybe you could start however you want. Satchel Paige is the first one that comes up, so that's who I started with. And it's essentially like a challenge mode. You go through specific, like I said, challenges. Like pitch 3 innings, don't let anybody score a run, like stuff like that. And in between, this is actually very similar to WWE's showcase mode, where you do gameplay that's challenge focused, and then you get actual like video presentation. So for the WWE game this year, it's like John Cena talks about the match, then you play the match, and then rinse repeat. So they have a gentleman from, I believe he's from the Negro League Museum, who will talk about Satchel Paige, like a specific like aspect of his game, like his pitch types. And then you will go play a challenge where it's like throw all these different pitches. And then he like talks about a game where he only threw fastballs. So then the next challenge you play, you can only throw your fastball. And it kind of, again, rinse, repeat, and you unlock things along the way. It's really, really well done. The video content is excellent. There are some weird stylistic choices to it. So a lot of footage from the Negro Leagues is gone. It's not like every game, these games weren't like televised really, so there's very little footage of some of these players, especially for like Satchel Paige. The only footage, eventually he made it to the major leagues. There's only so much footage of him playing, and it's usually him as an older man. So the footage that they do have, they show it, obviously. It's edited into this very slick, very well done video production, but they put these weird filters on top of it. And I'm not talking about just like, they put a filter on it that makes it look like you're watching it through like actual film. Like you'll see that, like the film burn effect, where you're seeing like the sides of the actual film. But they put this like, it's almost like they just applied like a PNG file of like scratches on top of it to make it look even worse. And it's like, this footage is already rare enough. Why are we putting these garbage filters on top of it? Like, just show me the actual real footage. I don't want to see these stupid effects on top of it. Like, I don't know. That was a little strange. But it's really cool. It's very like, it's interesting. You don't think about this in like a sports game or even a lot of video games in general. It's like incredibly educational, incredibly like historically relevant to the game. And you get to like learn as you play the game. And also just on top of that, from a purely like gameplay perspective, it's a cool challenge mode, like something you don't typically get in a lot of sports games. So I liked it for that. And I also like it because it's focusing on a lesser known part of baseball history. And so, yeah, it's awesome that they put the effort to do this. I hope they do something else like this in the future. I would not be surprised if perhaps next year they do the Girls League, which I can never remember. Is it the Girls Professional Baseball Association or American Girls Professional? I can't remember. It's from A League of Their Own, the Tom Hanks film in the early 90s. It would be cool to see something like that. Like that would be really neat. So maybe that's where they can take this in the future. Do something for next year's game. But yeah, that was pretty much everything I played this week. So we will take a brief recess and be back with the news. And we got a lot of news to cover this week. So strap it on. See you in a second. All right, we are back, and Nintendo has announced Nintendo Live 2023 coming to Seattle, Washington in September.
Shoshinkai is back, baby. Now I can live out my fantasy of becoming a booth babe.
Yeah, why not? So with no E3, and Nintendo, even before E3 shut down, switching to an all-digital video presentation with the Nintendo Direct, this is kind of cool. This is a return to form, so if you're not of a particular age, you might not remember Shoshinkai or Nintendo Space World, which were these Nintendo exclusive physical live events you could go to check out Nintendo games. And obviously, they did stuff at Tokyo Game Show and E3 and probably Gamescom, I assume. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really have any memories of Gamescom and Nintendo, so I can't remember if they did much with it. But this is what it says. It's an all-ages celebration of Nintendo fun. Share the excitement of playing games together, enjoying live stage performances, and more across a large-scale themed area. Whether you and your family are new to the games, characters, and worlds of Nintendo, or are lifelong fans, everyone is welcome to have fun. Now, here's what this isn't going to be, because there's been a lot of speculation online ever since this got announced. This is not replacing their E3 presentation or their E3 week Nintendo Direct. Maybe they announced something here, but this is not what that is. This is going to be a place for people to go and play games and hang out, and it's a marketing, it's an advertising thing. They even say games, photo ops, tournaments, and live stage. I mean, this is like an event. This is like a fun thing to go to, like a state fair kind of thing, you know? This isn't them to like announce new product. Now, what they very may well do is perhaps they will have some unreleased games or some demos of announced games that are coming up for people to check out. Maybe they do that, which that would be kind of cool. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that, certainly. But yeah, this is not going to be anything other than just like a cool Nintendo fan thing. I'm sure there's going to be people that travel from all over to go to do it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of families in the Seattle area that are going to go to it. I would imagine that locally in Seattle, they will probably advertise the hell out of this thing, try to get as many people as possible to go to it. And I think it's just a neat thing, you know, but I think some people online have just kind of been blowing this a little bit out of proportion as to what it actually will be. So, yeah, I think it's cool, but it's not going to replace, you know, we will get a Nintendo Direct in, like, June or, you know, that same week that, like, the Keighley Summer Games Fest stuff is going on. You know, that same time frame where Microsoft is doing their showcase. And I'm sure Sony will do a State of Play around that time as well. So, you know, we're still going to get our big video game announcements, you know, in the summer when we're used to getting them, just minus E3. And then this is kind of a cool little thing a little bit later on in the year to go to if you're a big Nintendo fan. All right, next up, Eric Wolpaw was out talking about Portal 3. So if you're not familiar, Eric Wolpaw wrote Portal. I believe he wrote Portal 2 as well, right? Did he do all of them? Can't remember. He's been doing some, I think he was working on like Half-Life Alyx lately. But Eric Wolpaw has basically said, you know, he still wants to make the game, but the way that Valve is structured, and if you're not familiar with the way Valve works, Valve has what is called a flat structure, which is essentially their employees work on whatever it is they want to work on. It's not like, let's use Blizzard for an example, where at Blizzard you are going to have, here's a group of employees that work on Diablo, here's a group of people that work on Warcraft, here's a group of people that work on Overwatch. That's your job. Your job is to work on those games. Whereas at Valve, that's how like some of their more bizarre stuff comes about, is that people just kind of like hop on a project and then that's how that gets made and that's how that gets put out. But it's also kind of the reason why we haven't seen some of these games that people have been talking about. We've been talking about wanting for so long, like Portal 3, Half-Life 3, et cetera, you know. There's just apparently not enough people that work at Valve that want to work on those games. And there's a really interesting quote from Eric in this article that's on PC Gamer. It says, Valve is not a giant company. I think people sometimes think it is because of the oversized influence of Steam, but it's really not that many people. It takes manpower to keep Dota going. It takes manpower to keep CSGO going. And the freeform nature of Valve means that there aren't a lot of experiments that simply fail. Or it means that there are a lot of experiments that simply fail. Sorry, I misread that. So things are happening. If you were inside Valve, you would think stuff was always going on because it is. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess at some point, maybe Portal 3 happens, but I honestly feel like that ship has kind of sailed, and it's Valve these days, like, they're in such a weird position. Like, I wouldn't put them in the bucket as, like, the same bucket as Konami, where it's like, is Konami still a video game company? Like, I guess they're trying to like reinforce some video game releases you know, in the coming future. I think they mentioned that they're going to start working on some stuff again, but Valve doesn't release a lot of games. You know, they have a lot of legacy titles, like evergreen titles that they can constantly update. And I was actually really surprised when they said like, oh, we're going to do Counter-Strike 2 instead of just continuing to update CSGO, So they just don't do a lot of game releases, like just straight game releases. What was the last one? They did that. I guess technically that last one was that VR like job assistant thing. But I mean, their last big title was Half-Life Alyx, which was VR exclusive. So it's only so big, it's not a huge release. I mean, yes, for them it is, but it's not like a big mainstream release because there's not a lot of VR headsets that can run that thing. It's not on like the PSVR or anything like that. So, and then they bought like Campo Santo that made Firewatch, and like their next game just never materialized, and those people have just broken apart, and they're just working on random like whatever projects within Valve. Valve is like a really fascinating company. I'd like to see some type of documentary at some point about Valve and how they do things. I think that would be really interesting to see because they are run, at least what I've seen from the outside looking in, they're run quite differently than any other like traditional video game developer. So I know that, there's always gonna be fans knocking down the wall for more. Like, listen, Portal 2 wasn't that long ago. Like, yes, it was, I think, over a decade ago at this point, but I have been waiting for Super Mario RPG 2 since the 90s, and that's never going to happen. So I think at some point people just kind of need to give up the ghost on some of these, hypothetical sequels to games that they really enjoy that are just probably never, ever going to come out. But it's cool that somebody at least, like the driving force, the writer of the game is still interested in doing it. So maybe if the opportunity presents itself, he'd jump right in and maybe we do get it. I wouldn't bet on it, but weirder things have happened and crazier things have happened. I wouldn't be surprised, I guess. All right. Also, I apologize if you can hear. I don't know what you guys can hear or can't hear. But it's very warm this weekend, so people are out mowing their lawns. You might hear that. Also, I live very close to a military base. I'll interject this real quick before we get into the next story. I live very close to a military base. I actually, people might be interested in this, about an hour away is actually the military base where all the PS3s are. So you might have heard that story years and years ago at this point, that the United States government bought a bunch of PS3s and stripped their cell processors out of them and installed them in a military base. It's actually about an hour away from me. Maybe a little bit, it's in Rome, New York. Rome, New York might be a little bit farther than an hour away, maybe an hour and a half. But I actually live really close to an Air Force base. It's down the road. So if you leave my house, go down the street, there is a Marines base, and then there's an Air Force base. And we also have Lockheed Martin here, which is military contracts. They build weapons for the military. And so they just recently, at the Air Force base down the street from me, got an F-35 jet. And they have been playing around with their new tool or new toy all week. They've been doing like vertical takeoffs with it or whatever it is. I think maybe it doesn't have vertical takeoff. It's like short takeoff. Like it doesn't need that long of a runway. This is one of the loudest sounds I've ever heard in my life. That thing was like right above my house the other day, and the glass in my windows was just rattling. I was actually in a meeting at work, and I had to put myself on mute because like I could not hear anything. So yeah, if you guys hear any weird sounds outside, like I said, I don't know what this microphone picks up and doesn't pick up, but people mowing their lawn and fighter jets going over my head. I also live close to a regular airport, so there's always planes flying above my head. It honestly doesn't bother me that much. You don't really hear the planes. Every once in a while, you'll hear a plane because when they land, they get pretty close to the top of my house because it's like, the airport's right there. But yeah, the military base, my God, this is doing some Top Gun shit over there, and it is super loud. But speaking of Top Gun, Sony's State of Play happened this past week, and it was focused on Final Fantasy XVI, which is coming out in June. I thought the game looked super nice. They are calling it the first true action RPG in the Final Fantasy franchise. To me, not having my hands on the controller, just watching it, it looks like it plays a lot like the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Very like fast on your feet, you're not pausing to take turns, like that kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to pick it up at release just because it is in a really rough spot. It's either 1 week or 2 weeks after Street Fighter VI and Diablo IV come out. So maybe, depending on how game releases shape up, if there's like a dead zone in like July, August, like something like that, like maybe I pick it up and play it. Or maybe if we end up, like last year, there wasn't really anything after November, like the middle of November that interested me. So I had like a month and a half of like no new releases. So maybe if something like that happens again this year, I pick it up. But I think it looks super nice. It's definitely a big change from art style, at least to me, looking at things. It's going back to like medieval, like fantasy, like there's dragons and all that kind of stuff. Like the effects look really cool. The spells, everything looks like top notch. I mean, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous looking game. And, I did give up eventually on Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just because I kind of got to a slog. I think the game was just a little bit too bloated for my taste. I get that they wanted to do that because they were only remaking part of the game in each increment. But for this, maybe it wouldn't, because it's one experience, it wouldn't have all that, so maybe I wouldn't bounce off of it. But I really like the way that Final Fantasy VII Remake played, so if this plays like that, I know, at least from that perspective, I'm going to really enjoy it. So I think, it really is, it's not because of lack of interest or anything like that I'm not going to pick it up at launch. It is, purely financial, buying 3 games back to back to back, that just doesn't really fit into the budget. And also, those are, Diablo and Street Fighter are 2 games like, we'll get into Diablo in a second. Street Fighter 6, I'm 100% picking up the day it comes out. It's already pre-ordered, paid off. Like that's already set. That's already done. So I'm picking that up when it comes out. Diablo we'll get into, but yeah. So maybe something happens with Diablo and I pick up Final Fantasy instead. We'll see what happens. But I think it looks good. Check out the state of play if you didn't. There's a lot of like mini trailers that have been posted online focusing on like the different kind of aspects of the game that they talked about during the state of play. I can't remember, was it 20 minutes long or 40 minutes long? I can't remember. It wasn't too terribly long, but a good look at the game. All right. Next up is a story about AEW Fight Forever, which apparently is still not coming out anytime soon, which isn't really that big of a surprise.
More like AEW delayed forever, am I right? I owe the Big Show a lot of money.
That tracks. So the guy who runs AEW, Tony Khan, has said that the game is finished, but the developers of the game say, no, it's not. And there's been kind of like some back and forth. I think that it's just Tony Khan, the guy that runs AEW. I think that he's just not informed on the aspects of the game. Like, I'm sure somebody told him, like, yeah, it's pretty much done. We're just tightening things up. But that means a lot in the world of video games for a game to be, like, finished, But there was a really good list, like, bullet points that were given. And this was by Per Hollenbo, who is THQ Nordic's senior community manager. He said, for a publishing house, a game is not finished until we have a shipping date and a release date 100% in stone. Development is just one part of the bigger picture. He also had another quote that was really interesting. I'm trying to find it. Oh, where was it? I apologize. I should have written it down, but I did not. Oh, he commented on a Twitter post saying, if you want an unfinished game, we could sure release it now. The game is doing really well and getting there, but not 100% yet. So yeah, just another rumor on Twitter. And then he gave a list of bullet points saying that outside of playing great in test matches, AEW Fight Forever still needs to do the following: pass quality assurance tests, get localized in 7 languages, get quote-unquote polished, have retailer and shipping deals, get submitted to first-party platforms and have all the unique requirements for said devices, get optimized on every platform, have marketing and public relations plans put in place, and get an ESRB rating. Now, if just one of these things isn't finished, then the game in a publisher's eye is not ready to be shipped, as then the product is not as wanted. So yeah, it's just not done yet. The game, there was the rumor going around that the game got delayed because they had to change the ESRB rating because of some of like the weapons and violence and blood in the game. I'm sure that's true. I don't think that that's not true. I think that that's probably a completely factual statement. I also don't think that the game has been anywhere near been near being done anytime recently, simply because we have this inflated sense of how long they've actually been working on this game. Because they announced this game years ago at this point. Simply put, the game got announced way too early. And it also doesn't help that every week on AEW television, they run ads for it saying, pre-order it now, game releasing soon. They've been doing that for months. They've been running that spot on TV for like, it feels like at least 6 months, if not 7 months, like stretching back to last summer, like getting within like 4 to 5 months of a full year they've been doing this. I was of the mind that the game was coming out this year, and I still think that it may come out this year, but it also might not. And a lot of people were thinking that it was going to come out around the same time WWE's game did, which was last month in March. WWE used to be an October release, but when they delayed one of their games and it came out in March instead. So now they're on a March release, which I think is a good time. March is right before when WrestleMania happens, their biggest event of the year. It's good marketing synergy, so to say. So that makes sense. So to me, AEW putting their game out in March or the spring of this year makes zero sense whatsoever. You do not want to compete against the WWE game. The WWE game, number one, has been getting good reviews, good player feedback, and number two, their marketing budget is infinitely more than what AEW's is. And it's the leader in the space, even though it's the first time there's been competition in a very long time. It's got the brand recognition. It's, people are used to the WWE game. There are people that like wrestling but don't necessarily watch WWE that still get it, because then they can just create their own characters, download other characters from other wrestling organizations and play it because of that. It's like the wrestling game. It's like the show with baseball. There is no other realistic simulation baseball competition. Same with basketball, same with football, same with hockey. There's only one game, for each sports league. There's only one wrestling game. Now there will be two, but it's not going to be out anytime soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a fall release. If AEW is smart, they do quarterly pay-per-views instead of WWE that does a big show every month. AEW does 4 a year. They do one in the fall. Have it released during then. Why not? You just put it out then. That's when other sports games are coming out. People are kind of used to sports games coming out in the fall because that's when the seasons start. So just do it then. Give yourself more time. But don't announce games years before they're anywhere near close to being done. That's where a lot of the confusion came from. All right, so next up, I touched upon it briefly, was some stuff going around about Diablo. And I wanted to get into that because now I'm having second guesses about playing Diablo at launch. So it said that Diablo IV will receive new story content every 3 months. And they ended up having to clarify this. So there was a clarifying article that came out on VGC. It says, Diablo 4 seasonal story content is not a new campaign, and each battle pass will take about 80 hours to clear. Franchise boss wants to manage expectations for those expecting epic new storylines. So this is where my issue is with the game. So everybody already knows that Diablo 4 is switching to a live service model. You can still play the game single player. You don't have to be in a party with other people. You can interact with other people online, but you do not have to. We saw that in the beta. You get to the point in the beta after like the tutorialization portion, the opening point of the game where you can then instance in with other players. You do not have to interact with them. I chose not to when I played the beta, but you can if you so choose. And there are like world bosses and world events you can interact with other players and go off and do them. This is what's got me a little worried, is it's a huge commitment. Now, granted, if you think about it as, this game is going to be out for years. They're still making content for Diablo 3. Diablo 3 has been out for a long time. So this game's going to be out for a long time. You're going to, this is not a game that you're going to just, play and then trade in. I mean, some people will, but, you're going to buy this game and you're going to be playing it for years to come, right? Which I have no problem doing. I don't have a problem doing that. You come back to it every so often. My problem is they're pumping the stuff out every 3 months, and I get that it's not like a new campaign, but how much stuff am I going to miss? Because I cannot dedicate 80 hours to every battle pass every 3 months. 80 hours in 3 months is just too much for me. That's 2 full weeks of my life spent playing, or 2 full work weeks of my life spent playing every 3 months. That's not going to happen, especially with other games coming out. And I have very much committed this year to playing as many different games as I possibly can. Now, granted, that's a personal choice. There are going to be people out there that the only thing they want to play this year is Diablo IV, and this is going to be great for them, but that's not for me. And I just feel like I can't keep up with games anymore when they do this live service kind of thing. It's very difficult for me to stay current because I just can't devote all of this time to it.
What do you mean you worry about having enough time? You sit around all night watching television wearing pants you fashioned out of Cool Ranch Dorito bags.
That might be true, but still, I don't want to have to feel like logging into Diablo to play every night is like a second job. That's how I always feel with this kind of stuff. Even when it's not a live service game. I remember when the first Overwatch came out. I don't have I don't have anybody in my life that I play video games with. I play everything by myself, unless I'm playing like Call of Duty, which obviously you're just playing with random people online. So it's not like I have a group of people that I play games with. I'm playing everything by myself. But when Overwatch, the original one, came out, there was a bunch of people at the job I was at the time that were playing it. So I decided to get it simply because I thought it'd be cool to play a first-person shooter with people from work and have that shared experience that we could talk about the next day, and it was great. And we were playing every night for 2-3 weeks after the game came out. And then I just couldn't keep up. They kept going, and they were playing until midnight, 1 a.m. And it's like, we're all getting up to go to work at the same time. Our shift all starts the same. I can't, go down to 3 hours of sleep because I was playing Overwatch. I just can't do it. So I bounced off of it, and that's the way it always is with live service stuff. Even with Call of Duty, a game I really like playing, I played all of Season 1, essentially. I didn't finish the Battle Pass, but I came very close to finishing it. I only played one game during Season 2. Season 3 launched this past week. I actually did play a little bit of Call of Duty this week, not enough to really get into it. In the first person, I only played, or first person portion of the show. Sorry for tripping over my words so much today. I woke up today with a massive, massive migraine. I am actually filming this at night instead of in the morning when I typically do, because I just needed to shut my eyes today. But I played a little bit of Season 3 this week, which is cool. I am going to play more. I want to get back into playing some Call of Duty, but I just can't dedicate myself to it anymore. I'm not 12 anymore. I just can't do it. I have other things that I want to do with my time than just sit and play the same video game every night. So I worry that some games that I love, like Diablo is a franchise I love, and I feel like I'm just getting passed by. And I'm not mad about that, because it's not their responsibility to make a game specifically tailored for me. They get to make the game that they want to make because they feel it's the smartest decision for them to do as a studio and as a publisher and a developer. But it does suck feeling left out, that the current trend in video games, this live service model, is just one that just doesn't work with my life. So it is disappointing, but I'm not upset about it. So I went from Diablo 4 will be a day one purchase, and I'm going to really try and stick with it as much as I can, to, well, I know realistically I can only stick with the game for so long. Am I going to feel like I'm getting cheated out of it, or am I going to feel like that the amount of time that I can devote to it and the amount of gameplay I got for that time is worth the price of admission? I feel that it is, because I know that there's going to be a beginning, middle, and an end to that story, and there will be stuff that happens around it and continuing afterwards. So as long as I feel fulfilled by that main storyline, then I think I'm good, and I think I'm okay with that purchase. But it just kind of sucks knowing, like, well, I think my time with this game is winding down, but they're also just kind of winding up with new content for it, and it just becomes, oh, well, it's a seesaw. Like, now I'm on the bottom end of the seesaw and hoping that I can push myself off to continue a little bit farther, it remains to be seen. We'll see what happens with it, but it is a little worrying that I feel like some things are just kind of passing me by, and it's just, that happens with life. We all get lapped eventually. All right. Next up, Ubisoft Plus, after being long rumored to be coming to the Xbox ecosystem, is now launching on Xbox. It is not tied into Game Pass like EA Play is. It is a separate subscription fee. It is $18 a month, meaning that it costs more than Game Pass. It has a very limited library of Ubisoft games, and actually the console version has a further limited library of games than the PC version, simply because some of those games did not get console ports, and there's no way to play them on a console. But they do say more games will be coming in the future. You do get new Ubisoft games at launch. So the next time an Assassin's Creed or a Tom Clancy game or whatever comes out, you will get the full version of the game at launch. So what a lot of people do with Ubisoft Plus is, this is what I did when Watch Dogs Legions came out, is you just subscribe to it for a month to 2 months, and you get your new game for less than the cost of going to the store and buying it. And on the side, you get to download and play some other games while you have the subscription active. Somebody did bring up a really good point online, which is like a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla that takes 70, 80, 90, 100 hours to complete. If you don't have a ton of time to devote to it, you may end up subscribed to the service for 4 to 5 months, and now you have paid more than what it would have cost you to buy the game. So it's kind of a balance. I think it is tough. You know, yes, you do get new Ubisoft games at launch, but how many games does Ubisoft actually put out anymore these years, especially after taking some time off of heavy hitters like Assassin's Creed? But they have a list on the Xbox website of games that are coming out. It's essentially all the Assassin's Creeds, all of the Far Cries, except for I did not see Far Cry 2 on there. And then some random other games that you would expect. All 3 Watch Dogs games are on there. Some stuff that always pops up with Ubisoft stuff, like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Uno, Trivial Pursuit. They have that kind of stuff. Some of the Rabbids games are on there. Riders Republic, which came out last year or the year before, is on there. A lot of board game stuff, Risk, Monopoly, etc., etc. Immortals, Phoenix Rising is on there. Boggle is on there. Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez, I was getting that mixed up with the oh my God, what game? Not Boggle. Why am I getting that mixed up? I'm getting that mixed up with the EA game, the PopCap game. What is that called? Oh my God, it's like one of my favorite little games of all time. They made Plants vs. Zombies. What was the other game? Oh my God, Peggle. I was getting that mixed up with Peggle. I've read this list like 3 times now. It's like, why is Peggle on there? It's not. It's Boggle. I'm losing it. This headache is just, I'm out of it. So yeah, I mean, if you're like a Ubisoft super fan, sure, go for it, you know, but it is a tough proposition when most months out of the year there will not be a new release, and it does cost more than Game Pass. So it's a little bit tough sell, but it's cool that the service is now out on consoles after being PC exclusive. And then our last story of the week is one that does not surprise me in the least, and that is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed even further now, all the way to February 2024, so almost a year delay. So the game was supposed to already be out by now, or it was supposed to be coming out in May. I apologize. I mean, actually, it was supposed to be out by now. They've delayed this game several times. But it was supposed to be coming out in a couple of months. They delayed it after huge backlash to the last trailer that they put out. They said, okay, we're going to delay it and it'll be out later in 2023. And then the other day they said, nope, February 2024. So this may give them enough time to rework the game as a service stuff, which people were not thrilled about. But it's not enough time to undo everything that people were complaining about. But maybe they find some type of middle ground compromise in it. I also think that being very proactive about claiming a spot in February of next year is a super smart move for them, because February over the past few years has become one of the biggest release months in games. February used to be like the hangover months. You know, January and February, you didn't really get games. You were expected to still be playing the games you got at Christmas time, the games that came out in the holidays, November and December. And then, you know, in the spring, you know, stuff picks up again. And then, you know, obviously the end of summer is when like the traditional gaming season starts. You know, it's always, you know, when John Madden sees a shadow. So I think them saying, hey, we're claiming a spot in February of next year is a really smart move for them. And hopefully that kind of sends a message to other developers, like, don't counter program, so to speak, against what could be a big release. Now, is this game going to be a big release? I don't think so. I don't think it's enough time to fix it. And honestly, the first thought I had in my head, and it sucks to say this, especially because so many people have worked for so long and so hard on this game, but the first thing I thought when I saw this news was just cancel the game. At this point, just cancel the game. Because what is better, I guess, and I'm not a financial guy, so I can't say for sure. But would it be better to just cancel it and let it live on as this kind of like internet meme, like, hey, remember when they wasted all these years of their lives trying to get this game to come out? Or is it better to release the game, sell some copies, probably not enough to make your money back, and have it be a poorly reviewed game? Like, I don't know, maybe from a business side, it is better to release it. I truly don't know, but I can't imagine that this game is going to light the world on fire. It's just not enough time to fix the problems that people had with that game. And still, that random comment on Reddit is just always going to stick in my head, was Captain Boomerang fires more bullets than throws boomerangs. Like, is that going to be something that they address? Are they going to actually have the time to make all these characters play differently? Is 10 months enough time to do that? Is 10 months enough time to strip back on this games as a service thing that people obviously very much do not want with this game? It really is just like a huge misfire on Rocksteady's part, because Rocksteady made these beloved Batman games. I mean, beloved Batman games. And all people wanted was just another game that played like that with a different cast of characters. And they give them this bloated, lifeless, generic-looking games as a service showcase trailer. It was a featured part of the Sony State of Play. And everybody walked away with a sour taste in their mouth. It's just sad. It sucks. It sucks for the people working on it, because they're getting torn apart for something that they've worked very hard on. And I'm sure at some level, people there realize, like, man, we were working on a bad game. We are actively working on a game that is not going to sell well. We are actively working on a game that's going to get torn apart by reviews. And this is the really fucked up thing to say, and I'm sorry for saying this, but this is just the way of life when it comes to running a business. There are people there that know we are actively working on a game that is going to perform so poorly that some of us are going to lose our jobs. And that's a shame, but that's also the reality of it. I think now more so than ever, we are living in a post-cyberpunk world. You've got to be confident in your big budget AAA games, because we already saw it with Gotham Knights. We see it. There's at least 1 to 2 every year now. Like, you just got to be smarter about this kind of stuff. And it sucks. It's a shame. It really is. I wish them the best. I hope they can turn it around. I hope they can turn it into something that people want to play, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with it, but that's going to wrap up the show for this week. Nothing else to really talk about. Not much else going on with the channel. I'm going to try and find the time soon to do another episode of Full Motion Sickness. I brought it up last week. I am just, a lot of my free time is just being devoted to working on music. And it's going to be that way for a little bit. So, this show might be the only thing you see on this channel for a little while, but I do want to do another episode of Full Motion Sickness. It's funny, because I said last week it's going to be a while before you see another traditional Perfect Reload video. I did the video a couple weeks ago at this point about the rise of fighting games in popular culture in the 90s. And, I said that I had a couple of ideas kicking around, but it's probably not going to be anytime soon that you see another one of those. And lo and behold, Friday night, I found myself working on a script for the next video. Still, it's not going to come out anytime soon, but I am working on it because it did kind of feel good to be back in the rhythm of having a larger project to work on for this channel. So we'll, it'll be out when it's out. I'll update every so often, as I make some progress, but that's gonna do it. So Mr. Mahogany, do you have any final comments before we go?
Oh, you hear that, man? I think they finally found me. Gas up the spruce moose. I gotta get out of here.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens next week, but until then, take it easy, and I'll see you soon.